The grand old Victorian house on Maple Street was everything to me as a child. It had been passed down to my father from his parents, and my mother never missed an opportunity to boast about it to anyone who would listen. "Just admire these original hardwood floors," she'd say at every backyard gathering, holding her glass of wine like it was a medal of honor. "You can't find craftsmanship like this anymore." I was just 7 when we moved in, and while my mother basked in the glory of her prized possession, I found solace in my father's quiet company. Dad understood me in a way my mother never could. He always knew when I finished a book and would reappear with another. "Hannah," he'd say with a smile, pulling a new book from behind his back, "I think you'll really enjoy this one." And I always did. Mom didn't understand. "Hannah, sweetie," she'd sigh, watching me snuggle up in the window seat with my latest book. "Why don't we play with the kids from next door? Sarah just got a new bike." "I'm good here, Mom," I'd respond without looking up. I could feel her disappointment, but Dad would wink at me over his newspaper. I wasn't entirely a recluse. At school, I found pride in writing for the school newspaper. My stories garnered attention, even from the popular crowd who would stop me in the halls, asking when my next piece would be published. But my ultimate retreat was always my grandmother's house. Her library had the scent of old paper and leather, and she let me spend hours there. "A writer has to read," Grandma would say, running her fingers over the spines of her books. "That's how you learn to tell your own stories." She'd bring me cookies and hot chocolate while I devoured everything from classic literature to mysteries. I was 12 when the police knocked on our door. I remember it all. The shattering of Mom's coffee cup, the officer's somber face, and the words "terrible accident" echoing in my ears. Just like that, Dad was gone. Mom grieved for weeks. I would hear her sobbing softly at night, but soon things began to change. Makeup and perfume replaced tissues, and she started going out at night, returning with a bounce in her step. "Life goes on, Hannah," she told me one morning. "We can't stay sad forever." I nodded, but something didn't feel right. That was the moment my childhood began to unravel. Mom met Richard at an office party, and within a week, he was having dinner at our house. 2 weeks later, his belongings were moved in. A month later, they married in a small courthouse ceremony. It happened so fast, I barely had time to process the fact that this stranger was now living in Dad's house, sitting in Dad's chair, sleeping in Dad's bed. The first time Grandma met Richard, I saw the concern in her eyes. She pulled Mom aside, and their quiet conversation quickly escalated into heated words. "Linda, you barely know this man," Grandma hissed. "Think about Hannah." "I am thinking about her," Mom replied. "She needs a father figure." She had a father. Grandma's voice cracked. "And his memory deserves more respect than this." That was the last time Grandma was allowed in our house. Mom told her not to return until she could support their new life. Richard never hit me or yelled, but he made me feel unwelcome in subtle ways. If I was reading, he turned the TV up to full blast. If I was doing homework, he complained about the mess. Once, I was looking through Dad's old photos when Richard gathered them up and shoved them into a box. Mom watched and said nothing. Worse, she started sending me to my room whenever Richard came home. "Honey, Richard's had a tough day," she'd say. "Let him have some peace and quiet." Then Mom got pregnant. Whatever scraps of attention I had left completely vanished. They turned Dad's old office into a nursery. When my sister Emily was born, it felt like she was the first baby ever to exist. One morning, I stood in front of Mom as she fed Emily. "Mom, none of my clothes fit anymore. I need new ones for school." She looked at me as though I asked for a luxury vacation. "Hannah, do you have any idea how expensive babies are? We just bought Emily a new crib." "But Mom, my jeans are all too short." "For heaven's sake, Linda," Richard interrupted from behind his newspaper. "When I was her age, I wore hand-me-downs." Mom sighed. "We'll go to the discount store this weekend, but this is the last time, Hannah. You're getting too expensive to take care of." Too expensive to take care of? I thought, feeling like I was an old car in need of too many repairs. I looked at Emily in her designer onesie, surrounded by new toys, and something inside me hardened. One rainy Tuesday, as I trudged home from school, I heard a familiar voice. Standing under a red umbrella, with that mischievous smile I'd missed, was Grandma. "Hannah, sweetie," she pulled me into a warm hug. "Oh, you've grown so much." "Grandma," I hugged her back, realizing how much I'd missed her. I haven't seen you in so long. Her expression darkened. I know, dear. Your mother? Well, she's made it clear I'm not welcome at your house anymore. Then her eyes sparkled. But what she doesn't know won't hurt her, right? How about we get some hot chocolate and catch up at the little cafe? Over steaming muns and chocolate croissants, Grandma made her proposition. Your mother can't stop me from seeing my granddaughter, she said. If she asks, just tell her you're out with friends. You do still have friends, don't you? And so my life was divided in two. At home, I was the unwelcome presence, tiptoeing around Richard's moods and Mom's indifference. But my afternoons were mine, spent with Grandma. We'd spend hours in her library discussing books and writing. She'd help me with homework, and then we'd cook dinner together. Mom never questioned where I went. If anything, she seemed relieved when I returned late. This continued until one evening, when Mom and Richard dropped a bombshell. Emily needs her own room, Richard said. She's outgrown the nursery. I looked up, confused. But all the rooms are taken, unless you're turning Dad's old office into a room. We've decided to give her your room, Mom interrupted. You can sleep on the pull-out couch in the basement. The basement. The dark, musty space where Richard stored his tools and Mom kept old holiday decorations. Where the heating barely worked in winter. This isn't fair, I protested. What, your father isn't here, is he? Mom snapped. And honestly, Hannah, you should be thankful we're letting you stay here at all. Most kids your age will be happy to have any space to themselves. I sat at the dinner table, fork poised in mid-air, unable to move as my mind processed her words. It was as if I had become a charity case in my own house. No longer the daughter who had lived here since childhood, the girl whose father had lovingly painted clouds on her bedroom ceiling, dreaming of lying under the stars. When do you expect me to leave? I asked, my voice empty, devoid of any feeling. This weekend, Richard replied bluntly. I need to start painting on Monday. Emily wants pink walls. That night, I lay in my bed, just for 3 more nights, staring up at the clouds Dad had painted. I snapped a photo, knowing those clouds would soon be covered by whatever shade of pink Emily had chosen. Another part of my dad erased, another part of me displaced. Being relegated to the basement was, in a twisted way, a blessing. The isolation gave me space to think, to formulate an escape plan. College became my lifeline, my way out. I threw myself into my work, spending every afternoon at Grandma's house, focused on applications. My portfolio grew with achievements. Editor of the school newspaper, multiple statewide writing awards, and a collection of short stories published in literary magazines. Mrs. Peterson, my English teacher, wrote glowing recommendations, calling me the most promising writer I've encountered in 20 years of teaching. When graduation day arrived that sticky June, I sat with my classmates in the auditorium, searching the crowd for familiar faces. Grandma was there, smiling proudly, but Mom and Richard's seats were empty. They had decided to go to Emily's dance recital instead. After the ceremony, Grandma embraced me tightly. Your father would have been so proud, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. She handed me an envelope with a card and enough cash for a new laptop. Acceptance letters started coming in March. 3 rejections, 2 waitlists, and then, the one I had been hoping for. Riverside State University offered me a partial scholarship for their creative writing program. My hands trembled as I read the letter again and again. That evening, I thought maybe I'd finally tell Mom. Maybe she'd be proud. Maybe she'd remember Dad's words about me becoming a famous writer one day. I got into Riverside State, I said, trying to steady my voice. They offered me a partial scholarship. Richard didn't even look up from his phone. Mom paused, her fork halfway to her mouth, then set it down slowly. Oh, Hannah, she sighed, we need to talk about college. What do you mean? I have a scholarship and Dad's college fund. About that, Mom interrupted, placing her hand on her belly, something I had come to resent. We've had to rework our finances with a new baby coming. The blood drained from my face. What do you mean, adjustments? Emily's private school tuition is already a strain, and with another baby. My college fund? My voice wavered. The money Dad saved for my education. Your father would understand, Mom said coldly. Family comes first. Family comes first, I repeated, the words echoing in my mind. I looked at her, the stranger who wore my mother's face, and the realization hit me like a hammer. I was no longer part of her family. Suddenly, I stood knocking my chair over in the process. That money isn't yours to spend, I snapped. Dad worked overtime for years to save it. It was for me to go to college. Mom's face turned red with anger. How dare you be so selfish? Your sister needs. Emily is your daughter with Richard, I shouted, cutting her off. Dad's money was for me. His daughter. Do you not remember that? Richard's hand slammed the table, making the dishes rattle. Enough. Your mother and I have put up with your attitude long enough. It's time for you to choose. Show respect, or what? I challenged, my anger flaring. Mom rose slowly, her hand resting on her pregnant belly. Or you can leave. Leave. I echoed, my voice filled with disbelief. This is my house. Dad's house. Mom's voice turned icy. Since your father didn't leave a will, the house legally belongs to me. You're 18 now, an adult. I'm not obligated to take care of you anymore. I stared at her, unable to process what she was saying. This woman, who had once packed my lunches with love, who had held me when I was sick, was now kicking me out of my own home. You can't be serious. Without a word, Mom walked to the front door and flung it open, the spring air rushing in, carrying the scent of lilacs, Dad's favorite flower. Get out. I froze, staring at the stranger who had once been my mother. Then something inside me clicked, and without another word, I went down to the basement, packed my things, and left. It didn't take long. Most of my belongings were books. I could hear Emily asking what was happening, Richard's gruff response, and Mom's silence. 20 minutes later, I stepped out of my childhood home, 2 duffel bags and a backpack in hand. I didn't look back. Grandma was waiting for me before I even knocked. She took one look at my face and pulled me into her arms. I let the tears come. Once I had calmed down, I told her everything. Her expression darkened, but her voice was firm. You'll stay here, of course. I'll cover whatever the scholarship doesn't. Grandma, no, I can't. You're not asking, she interrupted gently. I'm telling you. Your father would never forgive me if I let his daughter's dreams die because of this. 3 months later, I was settling into my dorm at Riverside State. I found a job at the campus cafe, flexible around my classes. Between that, Grandma's support, and my scholarship, I made it work. Mom never called. Never texted, never checked on me. I deleted her number, but the ache remained every time I saw other students with their parents. In my junior year, something unexpected happened. While working on an assignment, I found myself writing a psychological thriller about a woman uncovering dark family secrets. Maybe I was working through some things. You should enter it in the National Emerging Writers Competition, my professor suggested after reading the first few chapters. It's raw, it's honest. I spent months refining the manuscript, writing between classes and shifts, staying up late into the night. When I finally submitted it under the pseudonym E.J. Blake, I didn't expect much. The competition had thousands of entries. Then the call came. Is this Hannah Morrison? A woman's crisp voice asked. I'm calling from Riverside Publishing about your submission to the National Emerging Writers Competition. I gripped the phone. Yes. Miss Morrison, we are pleased to inform you that the Glass House has won first place. We would like to offer you a publishing contract. I sank to the floor, overwhelmed. The offer they made was the largest sum I had ever encountered. The contract came the following day minus 12 pages of dense legal jargon. But it was clear, they had faith in me and wanted more books. 4 months later, my first novel hit the shelves and the reviews were overwhelming. An incredible debut, unflinchingly honest, a fresh voice in modern fiction. By the time I graduated, 2 more books under my pen name had become bestsellers. My second advance bought me a Chick City apartment, and the third allowed me to quit my cafe job and focus solely on writing. Grandma kept me updated on family matters, though I never asked. Emily was starting first grade, and Thomas was in kindergarten. I nodded at the dinner table, pushing my pasta around. It felt odd having siblings I had never met, but I was content, especially after meeting David at a bookstore while researching my 4th novel. He was a literature professor, unaware that the author he admired was right next to him in the classic section. E.J. Blake's latest release, he said, noticing me eyeing a display of my work, is brilliant. Wish I knew who they really were. I smiled. Maybe they prefer to keep their privacy. 2 years later, we married in Grandma's backyard, surrounded by books and fairy lights. David read a passage from the glass house during his vows, not realizing it was from my own book. We bought a house in a quiet neighborhood, complete with a library bigger than my old basement room and a garden full of lilacs. Life was good. Better than good. Then came the unexpected. "It's time," Marcus, my publisher, said during a quarterly meeting. "Your new book is your best yet. We believe revealing E.J. Blake's identity will create a huge buzz for the release." He was right. The reveal was staged as a major literary event at the Grand Plaza Hotel. Journalists, critics, and fans filled the ballroom. I stood backstage, heart racing. "Ready?" David asked, straightening my blazer. "No," I laughed, "but when has that ever stopped me?" As I stepped onto the stage, camera flashes going off like fireworks, I felt an unexpected calm. "Hello," I said into the microphone. "I'm Hannah Morrison, but you might know me better as E.J. Blake." The room exploded in applause. For weeks, my face was everywhere. Magazine covers, talk shows, literary blogs. Mystery author revealed, E.J. Blake, literature's best-kept secret. The woman behind the words. Then came the message on social media. "Hannah, sweetheart, I've been watching you on TV. You look so beautiful, so successful. I've missed you. Can we talk? I want to make things right. Love, Mom." I stared at the message. After 14 years of silence, now she wanted to talk. "I have nothing to say to you," I replied. "Please don't contact me again." I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. A week later, David called from downstairs. "Someone's at the door." I knew. Mom stood on my porch, older but still familiar, her eyes red and swollen. "Oh, Hannah," she cried, stepping forward. I stayed behind the screen door. "What do you want?" She wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. "I've been following your success. You've done so well for yourself." "No thanks to you," I replied. I know I made mistakes," he said, wringing her hands. "But I'm here because Emily's graduating high school. She's so bright, accepted into several colleges. But with Thomas still in school, the economy being what it is." I laughed bitterly. "You're here for money." "She's your sister," Mom pressed. "I know you're doing well. Those books must be bringing in a lot." "My sister?" I cut in. "The same sister you gave my room to? The one you spent my college fund on?" "Hannah, please, we're family." "No," I said, my voice firm. "We're not family. Family doesn't throw their child out. You chose Richard and your new family over me. You don't get to act like a loving mother now just because you want my money. You ungrateful brat." She screamed, causing a scene on my quiet street. "You let your sister suffer just to spite me." I stepped back inside. "Goodbye, Mom." The door slammed behind me, muffling her continued cries. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. A week later, David called me into the living room. On the TV, my mother was crying as a sympathetic interviewer leaned in. "My daughter abandoned us," she sobbed. "As soon as she got famous, she forgot where she came from. Now my little sister needs help with college and she won't even answer our calls. Money changed her. Success made her cruel." The interview was just the beginning. My social media was flooded with hateful messages from strangers who had seen her claims. "Karma will get you," one comment read. "What kind of person abandons their family?" another asked. I was in shock until Marcus called. "We're holding a press conference," he said. "Time to tell your side." "I don't want to air my dirty laundry," I protested. "Hannah," he said gently, "you've built your career on truth. Maybe it's time to share yours." The next morning, I stood at a podium, cameras flashing. Grandma sat beside me, her posture straight, her eyes resolute. "My name is Hannah Morrison," I began. "And this is the story my mother isn't telling you." We laid it all out. The stolen college fund, the basement bedroom, the cruel stepfather, the day I was thrown out. Grandma showed bank statements proving she paid for my education. I had old texts, school records, witnesses. I didn't abandon my family, I concluded. They abandoned me. The only family I had was my grandmother, who took me in when my own mother cast me aside. I built myself from nothing, with no help from the woman now demanding I sacrifice my new family's dreams. The story broke like a tidal wave. Author reveals years of family abuse. The headlines screamed. Mother's claims backfire. The truth behind E.J. Blake. My latest book shot to #1. Mom tried another rant on social media, but my lawyer's cease and desist letter shut that down. One more false statement, I warned, and I'll see you in court. She finally fell silent. That was 5 years ago. Life has settled into a peaceful rhythm. David and I have our quiet home, our library, our garden. Ranma comes for Sunday dinner every week, and we share real, honest stories. Sometimes I think about Emily and Thomas, the siblings I'll never know. I hope they're happy. I hope they're loved. I hope their mother learned to be better for them than she was for me. But mostly, I don't think about that part of my past at all. Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about the people who choose to stay when others walk away. Sometimes it's about building something new from the ashes of what was lost. Thanks for watching, and see you again in the next video. Stay stunned.